So remember, they're changing my voice. In this video, I'll discuss with you some of my life story when I was younger. Some of how they impressed upon me that I'm not wanted on this planet, that God's not wanted on this planet, and that they want to control reproduction and sexual behavior and kind of make kind of mock me and so on and so forth. So, first and foremost, the people in charge, okay, they're evil. I trace them to, not just Babylon, but Greece and Rome, where they mixed with different people in sex cults, right? Persians, North Africans, people in the area, right? Sabines, various groups of people, Greeks, what have you. And historically, these were very violent cults, very forceful. For example, in Greece, you don't forge a culture where little kids are courted by older males, little boys, teenage boys, what have you, without force, right? They forced them, right? They coerced them. They said, this is how it's done, and they're proud of their culture, and you better not say anything, okay? They have a long history of this activities, You see the West with the wearing of wigs and so on and so forth. Very effeminate on purpose, and it is what it is, okay? So, when I was younger, people would say things like, "You a black guy." I mean, there was some racism in my life as a kid, but it wasn't. In a sense, it wasn't that serious. It was just hateful kids saying things, and most of the white children I went to school with were pretty well behaved. I was friends with white people and so on and so forth. And I grew up in the 80s. And I was born in the early 80s, and I grew up in the 80s in California, okay, Northern California, here in the San Jose area. Okay, and I've only been outside the country once to go to Canada briefly. I've never been to Mexico. I haven't been to that many states. So I've been in California basically most of my life. When I was young, when I look back at it, they were running psychological operations on me. It's pretty straightforward. Now, there's a lot of people that, were around me when I was younger that probably don't want me to speak on it. But I think that the right thing to do is to speak on it. Because eventually in this story, I'm going to tell you how they sent me a very disturbing message about how they're going to control reproduction. These are people that threaten people and do things like that. I think these are the people who impressed upon the mafia, for example, a lot of their tactics, right? These are deep state tactics we see in some mafia trial, that they said that the mafia and the CIA are two sides of the same coin. I forgot this guy's name, but he was from the Chicago outfit, Al Capone, the guys who took over after Al Capone, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So anyway, when I was in a very young preschool, I think I should go ahead and say I won't say the preschool's name. I guess I should try to keep a little bit of privacy. There was a kid named Jason, right? You can't make this up. And he used to bully the other kids. And my little brother went to the preschool too. I was really young, man. I must have been like 3 years old when I was young. Okay. And, ever since early age, the monkey bars, right? I do cross the monkey bars with the best of them and so on and so forth, And so there was this kind of, it was a pretty elaborate sort of jungle gym playground, you know what I mean? Where there's slides and all kinds of stuff. And, you could be around the corner, right? So for whatever reason, these guys were always picking on everybody, but with an emphasis on my little brother. And most of them weren't very athletic guys. They were just groups, maybe 5 or 6 of them. So they would go around the jungle gym and play a game of like hide and seek. And, sometimes I'd come around, I'd see them like picking on my little brother, and I'd take them all on, And it was interesting because when I took them on, it was like quite often they didn't try very hard. Whenever they tried hard, they'd fucking lose, right? And it was such that it was hard for them to all gang up on me because I would pick the terrain, right? I'd go to like a place where they have to take me on 1 or 2 at a time, or and I'd be swinging on the bars, and they'd be swinging on the bars trying to take me on, and I'd take on one or two at a time. And, you know, so with Jason, basically, I was a little bit better than he was, okay? And so that was really where any competition came from. And so we're always kind of, clashing. And there was a few other kids who got picked on, and every once in a while, I convinced them to kind of, take our side, right? And, you know, quite often they'd ask me, to help them out. Okay, they'd be like, they'd tell me to help them because they're being taken. There's two of them there, and there's two bullies or something, and the bullies are like a little bit bigger than them. So I'd have to kind of go around, protect my little brother, protect those guys, and we'd take them all on at once. Okay. Every once in a while, the teachers would come and say, "What are you doing?" Right? And sometimes you get spanked by the teacher back then. I mean, that's how it was back then. One particular teacher in general, and she was an Indian lady, and she seemed like a pretty nice lady, but she was a very firm lady, and so she would spank us and so on and so forth. Strange enough, also when we cuss, my mom back in the day, sometimes she'd be around or whatever, and she'd wash my mouth out with soap. You can't make this up. For whatever it was, that's what people thought they should do. I guess other people did it too, you know. So if the soap taste would be in your mouth for quite some time, right? Literally with soap, and so there was that. I remember one time, one of the kids that I was helping out, he had all kinds of yellow stuff on him, and he was crying. And I think people were saying it wasn't piss, or they were confusing me about what it was. You know what I'm saying? So those dramatic issues where I had to, dramatic showdowns and so on and so forth. My older brother, it turns out, that he went to that school too, though I don't remember. Okay, and he certainly wasn't helping us out, and for whatever reason, I guess he had left by that time that was really occurring. And he said that these kids told him that their parents are in the military, and that they're gonna kill him, right? That they could kill him, and that he was a little kid, and he was tripping out about it, and they were like geeking and smiling and seething with like Luciferian energy. Okay, so we look at the racial dynamic, right? Some white kids that were convinced to briefly be on my team, they eventually defect and say they don't want to get into trouble, and that they don't like taking these guys on, and they're just gonna try to fend for themselves, right? It's interesting because there were certain technologies that the government had. Their computers that were available to the public weren't that advanced back then. It was like Commodores and so on and so forth. But I truly believe that they had technology. I have reason to believe that they had technologies back then, including the ability to send covert messages to people. And this is, using frequencies. What's called the Frey effect was, and they built on the Frey effect and things like that, which has to do with radar and the frequencies that allow you, from my understanding, to hear things, right? It's been a while since I've researched the Frey effect, but it has something to do with this type of stuff, okay? So, they were using some of these technologies on me when I was a kid, but, and maybe even inducing dreams. When I look back at some of the dreams I had, they're consistent with these people's capabilities at this time. So remember, the government stays quite a bit ahead of the general public. That's what they historically said. So if they said, last year, that they have the ability to start reading the mind, they probably had the ability to start reading the mind 10, 20 years ago. You see what I'm saying? And so it is with some of these primitive technologies. I'm not quite sure how they would have induced the dream, so maybe I'm mistaken about that. Because I must have been like, when I had this dream, 8 years old or something. That's like, 32, 33 years ago. So it's kind of a stretch. I'm not sure. But I certainly had this dream that was very similar to the types of things that they try to impress upon me. And later on, I had several dreams as I got older, more like a teenager, maybe more like 15 years ago, 16 years ago. Excuse me, more like actually 25 years ago, excuse me. Dreams that, there was this water, the whole place was flooding, and I jumped in the water, not knowing if I'm going to live or die, trying to save my family. Okay, jumped out of a tree. It's very similar to a leopard. I think they induce those dreams. Okay, and another dream where, there was these guys who look like mages, okay, and they look like mages in a way that is not corny or Hollywood, right? They look like some kind of divine beings or something, okay, with some kind of, with a very serious look and some kind of hoods on. There's some kind of pool there, some kind of pool that represents, traversing the realms. And they said something about, if I go into the pool and try to help humanity, that I'm not going to be able to help them, but, that I can go if I wish. Okay, so I had dreams like this. Okay. Anyway, fast and forward, I'm just going to, I didn't expect to take this long, but I'm just going to go ahead and talk about, when I was younger, I tried to talk to women on the internet, and eventually I started, being, horny teenager, what have you, young teen, or however old I was. I don't remember my exact age. And we used to download things from the internet. And, somebody had sent me a package of pictures, okay? And I can't say where I was at this time, whether I was boarding school or wherever. But as I download, the pictures, okay, there's one picture of a female who had just been raped and beaten bloody, and for whatever reason her mouth was open. She looks like she was crying, if I remember correctly. She had black hair, and she had, like, all her teeth were missing. There was blood everywhere, and she's naked, and you could tell that they raped and beat the hell out of her. And I didn't quite understand. I said, why would somebody put that in there? Why would somebody put this in the pack? There's rape porn, and it's like fake, right? And that was more like snuff, right? And I'm like, what the hell? So I deleted at some point, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, first I was tripping off. I'm like, man, wow, this is fucking crazy. Like, why did these guys take this picture? And later on, if I'm not mistaken about the timeline, I meet this chick on the internet. She's from Kansas City. She sends me a picture that looks nearly identical to that chick, how you would expect that chick to look before she was beaten and raped. Long black hair, kind of thickish build, what I'm saying, without being too fat, just attractive-ish. And, she likes to talk with me on the phone and so on and so forth, right? And, she swears up and down, this, that, and the other thing, that she's in love with me and all this stuff. But she isn't. And the last time I spoke to her, she acted like she didn't give the first fuck. She's like, who's this again? Oh, yeah. And then she acted like she barely remembered me, even though we used to talk all the fucking time. And then later on she sent me other pictures that look like people that I would eventually talk to, the people, excuse me, yeah, it looks like people I eventually talked to, okay? And, okay, so I believe I left off, before the phone was cut out, on the picture that was sent, and the female from Kansas City, and so on and so forth. Now, when I was real young, I forgot to bring this part up. I used to say that the ideal woman was a white woman with black, when I was younger, saying black hair, and, some kind of eyes that matched the hair, and so on and so forth, and you might think Snow White or something, but no, I got it from watching, from reading magazines and seeing the lingerie models. They look different than they do these days, very clean, very nice skin. You're like, man, it must be, very enjoyable to date one of these females or whatever, so there's that. So real briefly, I want to wrap this up, by saying that there are a bunch of organized criminals and street criminals that work together. Michael Thompson had said, for example, an Aryan Brotherhood dropout, that the Hells Angels worked, had members in the Aryan Brotherhood. It's one example of many. And these guys had said that the Aryan Brotherhood acts as hitmen for the mafia. The Mexican mafia had said, when the FBI had said that it was modeled after the Italian mafia. Remember, the CIA and the mafia are said to be two sides of the same coin, right? They work with the government's interests. We see Lucky Luciano having helped negotiate the surrender of Italy in World War II. So there's a lot, these things overlap, and it's kind of a white power structure, a criminal power structure, and it's satanic, right? Whenever you're not putting the emphasis on moral precision, it's Satanism. When you have people who are burning saints' pictures and people with satanic tattoos, like these prison gangs and Hell's Angels, right? That theme, Hell's Angels, right? They're not God's angels, okay? And you see all the groups that are like them. If you're nearly identical to these groups and you're not doing anything to distinguish yourself morally, well, I'm out of time.